I think I should share my screen. 1 second here.
And while he's doing that, I'll just briefly say thank you so much to everybody for joining us here. This is our first information session, so thank you in advance for your patience as we run through this for the first time. It's our intention to get as quickly as possible to questions today. A lot of information is already on the GNI Startups Lab website, so please check that out if we don't answer, if we aren't able to get to one of your questions today, but we will do our best. So I'm Anika, I'm the programming director of Line Publishers, and this is my esteemed colleague, Phillip Smith.
Yeah, and hey, Anika, you may just want to mute people again, just because if somebody has their speakers.
Oh. I
and then I have to unmute myself.
Phillip, yeah.
Yeah, and a quick note. So for anybody who's joining today who is maybe like in a job in an organization or newsroom, and they don't want that newsroom to kind of know that they're thinking about this, you may want to turn off your video and mic just so that we don't catch you on the recording. And you can also drop us a note, either myself directly or Anika directly, and just say, hey, like, make sure I'm not in any final video, because we want people to be involved in this. And we also recognize people may have jobs that where they don't want their boss to know that they're thinking about starting something new. So that's totally understandable, and we want to respect that. So yeah, so okay, we're recording. I've dropped a link in the chat to this fun retro board, and I'm hoping that you'll all open that up so you can kind of follow along with the agenda and with the Q&A. And I think, Anika, were you gonna kick us off, or do you want me to just take on this slide, or how are we gonna do that?
Yeah, so I'll just briefly say again, so the Startups Lab is an 8-week remote boot camp. Phillip ran this program a couple of years ago, and at Lion, we're really excited to get this going again. And we are really looking forward to all of your questions. That's my official kickoff.
Yay, awesome. Okay, cool. And yeah, so Phillip Smith, obviously, I've been doing consulting for newsrooms for almost 2 decades now. My passion is really helping newsrooms make more money. I love working with startup newsrooms, and really the root of what I'm passionate about is working with journalists to help them start new newsrooms. And that's what this is all about. And so what I like to do, just to make sure we're kind of all on the same page, is I want everybody, if they can, to open up this link that I've dropped in the chat and just answer the first question there, which is, where are you joining from today? I see that we've got maybe 10 or 11, 12 people in the board. I'd love to get a bunch more. Wow, amazing. Chicago, Austin, Des Moines. Hello, Des Moines. Denver, Cincinnati, Long Beach. Awesome. Portland. Oof. Crazy time to be in Portland. Another Toronto, I think. Toronto represent, that's where I'm from. Awesome, keep putting them in there. This will be really helpful. Okay, so next up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of review the questions that we've got here. So keep that screen open. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set a 2-minute timer here. And what I want you to do is look at the questions column of the Fun Retro board, of this kind of Trello board or whatever we call it here. Look at the questions column, review those questions. I'm going to set the timer, and what I want you to do is, if there's a question there, or if you don't see a question there that would be important for us to try and get to today, please add it. And all you have to do to add it is just click the little plus button and drop it in. So I'm just going to set a 2-minute timer here. And yeah, just scan through those questions. See if there's something that's not already asked that would be critical for us to get to. Obviously your homework today was to bring us some questions. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, now's the time, and to add any questions that you've got about the boot camp, about the format, the curriculum, anything. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to, hide the voting for a second. Oh, it's already hidden. Good. There we go. Okay, so this program only for nonprofit newsrooms, or for-profit newsrooms, or nonprofits as well. That's great. You'd be able to take part in this program working in 9 to 5. Oh, these are excellent. Yeah, keep them coming. We got another minute on the clock here. Oh, this is great. Excellent. Great question. How do you define newsroom in this context? These are great. What are you looking for in prospective candidates? Okay, 20 seconds left. If your question is not there, now's the time to get it in. Wow. Definitely got a lot of questions to get through here. Okay, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Okay, so because we have so many questions, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm just going to set the timer for 1 more minute. Actually, I don't even think we need that long. I'm going to set it for 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do is scan through the list one last time, and I'd like you to vote. You'll have 3 votes. Just vote for questions that you think are really important. I ask that because I think we've got like 24 questions there, and it's unlikely that we'll have time to get through 100% of them. We're going to try and cluster a few together, but I want to make sure that the ones that are really important to people on this call are addressed first. So I'll just set that, let's set that to 1 minute, sorry. And I'll just let all of you vote. And you just do that by clicking on one of these little thumb icons. So 1 minute, if you just go through there and quickly add your votes for questions that are really important to you. And you can obviously vote for your own question.
For folks who just joined, we are working in this fun retro board to collect everybody's questions and vote on the ones that we are going to prioritize answering. And so feel free to hop into this link, which I will drop in again. It's a very bad feature of Zoom. I have to keep dropping this link in for new people who join, but just, yeah, visit that link and feel free to vote on up to 3 that you'd really like to see answered.
Okay, 5 seconds left, and I will reveal the votes. Whoa, okay. Well, this is votes still coming in. Amazing. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to pop back over into our slides here, and I'll just hop on to our next slide. We've only got 2 more slides, and we'll be right into the questions. And while I just chat about the curriculum overview, I'll let Anika kind of group and cluster questions together and maybe move the questions with the most votes up to the top. And then we'll get right into those in about 2 minutes. So a few people have asked along the way, and it's not something that we've put up on the website yet or kind of posted out to our email list. What is the curriculum for this boot camp? That's a great question. So here we have the course overview on screen. I'm not going to read it off, but I'll just give you a sense of the breakdown, basically, of how the bootcamp works. Obviously, it's 8 weeks. I do give folks a little bit of pre-bootcamp reading and or light assignments. If you're stoked to kind of be up and running on the first day of the boot camp, you can take advantage of that. If you don't have time, no worries, you can certainly do it after. But basically the boot camp breaks down into 3 major sections. The first 3 weeks, we really focus on you putting together a plan for what success looks like for you. So in a period of 3 years, and then coming back to about 3 months, and coming even down to 3 weeks, what does success look like? We try and test your plan to make sure that it is actually viable in a financial sense. Can we do some back of the napkin math, and can you get to your financial and other objectives, whether it be impact or output, in that period of time? And we really force you to be a little bit skeptical about your own idea to ensure that it's going to be possible to pull off. And if not, we adjust it and we right size it so that you're actually getting an accurate sense of what is feasible to accomplish in 3 months and 3 years. It's like good benchmark time periods that I work with. Second part of the boot camp is basically you interviewing a lot of people. If you're thinking that your revenue is going to come from sponsors, I'll be assigning you or asking you to go out and actually interview and talk to some sponsors. Who are they sponsoring now? What are they paying? And to start thinking about what revenue is going to look like. If it's membership, like an audience pay model, you'll actually be interviewing people in your community. Obviously, we'll be doing it remote. But that's the second big chunk, is kind of doing the homework to de-risk your business model, to ensure that you've talked to everybody you need to really understand the variables and the forces that are at play. And the last kind of chunk, probably the last 2 weeks of the boot camp, is actually building what we call a minimum viable product, or it's like the smallest version of your product possible, and presenting that to people as an offer to see if they take you up on it. And we work a lot one-on-one to ensure that offer is presented in the best way possible in terms of copy, visually, and so on. So that's basically the three parts of the boot camp. It is hard work. I want to really underscore that, so you know that it's significant effort required. And I work one-on-one with each and every one of you every single week, as long as you can accommodate that, to ensure that you're able to kind of get the most out of it. So yeah, that's the curriculum in a nutshell. And I'm going to hand it off to Anika to talk about what we're looking for in applications. And while she talks that through, I'm going to have a look at some of the questions.
Cool. So I am getting a few private messages as well. Just for those of you who have joined, a reminder that we are recording this meeting, and we will send this out to folks after the meeting is done. And we're happy to send out the 2 slides as well. So no need to furiously take notes, or, I mean, you're welcome to screenshot it now if you'd like to, but we will send this stuff out to you. So this is just a brief look at our application review criteria. What I tried to do here is break down, some of the questions that we're looking at, and then where we're going to be evaluating those in your application. So obviously the first question is just, is this a compelling idea? If there isn't currently an MVP, so a minimum viable product for what you want to build, is it realistic that you could create that by the end of the boot camp? Because that's certainly what we're looking for. By the end of the program, you should be in a position where you are either very close to putting something out in front of your customers, or you've already done that. Obviously, we're going to be looking at your background and experience as well. So what do you and your team member bring to the table? And then this idea of an unfair advantage. So, what is unique about your background? What can you bring that maybe nobody else can to this project idea that you have? And then, one of really the biggest questions is going to be, is there an audience for this? So we're going to really be looking at that, for you to describe the customer need in the application. I would say that, we do mention in the application, if you can point to any audience research, it doesn't have to be super robust. We're not talking about anything really scientific here, but even just, a few anecdotes, or, broad sort of observations, or some data you can collect online about who you're going to be reaching. I think that would make your application a lot stronger, because we want to make sure, obviously it's important for entrepreneurs to have a passion for this project, and we know that you likely, if you're applying for this, you have a very personal, deep personal passion for this, but we also want to make sure that there are going to be people who want to consume this and support this idea as well. And then finally, the idea itself, is there anything novel or unique about it? We do want to support, new ideas that are out there. And that doesn't necessarily mean, it has to be a completely type of, new local news publication. But, just by virtue of the fact that maybe there's nothing else in the community that you live in right now, and you would be launching something to fill a gap or a hole there, that in and of itself is novel or unique. So yeah, that's a very brief overview of what we're looking for. Anything you want to add to that, Phillip?
No, I think we should jump right into the questions, because they're, I think, really going to surface a lot of the specifics.
Yeah. Do you want to take this first one?
Yeah, so let me switch over to that. Hoping everybody can kind of see the questions that we have here now. So yeah, the first question is, and we've merged a few of them together here, just to try and make sure that we get them all, but wondering how far along it is, how far along one should be to be helpful. What's too early? Are established publications eligible, and if they're still in the early stages of sustainability? And how recent is recently launched? Would more than 1 year, less than 2 years qualify? So yeah, I'll just take those from the bottom up. Yeah, in our mind, basically, somewhere less than a year is ideal, but certainly we would consider between 1 and 2 years. The key, it's not that there's no specific date. It's not like 12 months, you've aged out. It's really about a person's willingness to be critical and skeptical and objective about their own idea. And what I've experienced over the years is that once a person, more often than not a reporter, is past a year, they're very emotionally attached to their idea, even though there might be pretty strong signs that it's, might not have enough traction to really become a viable business. And so more than anything, what we're looking at is, are you or is your team open to the idea of adjusting, changing course, getting some really thoughtful but perhaps critical and tough feedback on the idea to try and correct you and get you focused in the right direction quickly. So more than anything, that's what we're looking for. Is there an openness to really be in a state of learning and adjusting the idea to make sure it survives? So yeah, in that sense, really, you don't have to be that far along at all. It could be a nascent idea that you've been thinking about for a long time. You may not have done any work on it other than kind of written stuff down in your notebook, but you could also have launched something. As long as you're in a state where you need to be rapidly testing the assumptions, then this is probably the right fit. And certainly established publications are eligible if they are still trying to figure out sustainability, assuming big changes can be made. So for example, if you were a print magazine that's, 5 years old and you've got a board and staff and like it's going to be hard to pivot and make a change, probably not a good fit because this is only 8 weeks. So if you need to take a decision to management, it's going to take a week, and that's probably not a good fit. We want to be pivoting quickly in this boot camp. So yeah, I'm going to move that to the answered column, but if I miss something there, feel free to leave a comment on that card and we can dive back into it. Anika, do you want to take on the next one? Is this only for local news, or is this process relevant to a topic specific context? Concept?
Yeah, so we are prioritizing local news ideas, and that's just because of the environment that we're in right now, because of Lion's focus. But we will accept ideas for single subject news sites or topic specific ideas. We do think there's a lot of overlap in terms of serving a niche community if you are doing a local news publication or a single subject news site. So you should feel free if it has more of a national focus, but maybe it's focused on a very specific community, you should feel free to pitch that idea. I think we would like to see some of those, but the bulk of our focus is going to be local news. And then this other question, I think tied to it, how do you define newsroom in this context? Frankly, we could wax poetic all day about like what is news, what is journalism in this digital era where we're seeing a lot more folks without journalism or news backgrounds creating and sharing information. What I would say is if you want to create a product or service for people who live in the community, in a local community, and approach that product with the sort of standards of accuracy, transparency, and reporting, that is a newsroom to us. We'll get in a second to the question around like tools and services for journalists, because that's not so much what we're looking for, but hopefully that answers your question about what it means to be a newsroom.
Awesome. And I've just been clustering some cards because I see there's a bunch further down that are kind of related to some of the questions here at the top. Great. So I'll take on what type of companies is the bootcamp geared towards along the line, the questions of nonprofits or for-profits, and the question of tools or services. So in my experience, the bootcamp is really it's kind of tailor-made for people who are either thinking about leaving a newsroom or have left a newsroom. I always like to say the people that I find are the best fit are those who've kind of seen either, they've come to a moment of desperation or inspiration. And so either they've seen the writing on the wall at their newsroom, downsizing, layoff, etc., and they're desperate and they're thinking, uh-oh, I need to have another way to go here. Or they're inspired because they see maybe an opportunity, a print newsroom in their local hometown is shut down, and they think, wow, I've always wanted to start a local news outlet, where I grew up, and this is an opportunity for me to do that. So in a sense, the company is really like the solopreneur, or the, 2 people or 3-person company, like a small operation that is trying to bootstrap something that is new and focused on producing content or reporting. And I don't mean to say that everybody that I've worked with is a reporter. Often there's people that are coming from the business side. Maybe they've been in ad sales, kind of in a journalistic context. Often it's people that are just engaged in their community at like a civic organization. Maybe they work at a nonprofit or community organization, but they recognize that their constituents aren't getting the information they need, aren't seeing themselves reflected in the reporting around them. And so that's the kind of company that I think it's well geared to, either kind of solo, duo, or trio teams that are trying to bootstrap a content or reporting business. So in a sense, both for-profits and nonprofits fit perfectly. We don't really get into tax status in the bootcamp. We will, talk about it, but it's not a decision you need to make early on. And that's something that we've seen over and over again, and believe like ultimately you'll need to pick. But in the first year or so, it often doesn't matter. I guess one thing that is, I should touch on though, because it's come up a couple times, is this is not really a fit for people who are building products that are tools or services for other newsrooms or for reporters. So this is not kind of the, simply because we're expecting a cohort of people that are building information businesses or information nonprofits, or reporting or journalistic businesses or nonprofits. So we're not focusing on teams that will be building tools. And so just in the interest of having a cohort that's cohesive, we're not going to focus on tools. So hopefully that is answering that question. And I guess this one specific one, does a nonprofit literary magazine fit into the criteria? Maybe I'll kick that one over to Anika. I started at a literary magazine. I have a deep passion for the form. I would say that probably it would fall a little bit outside of local news or single subject. But I will kick to Anika for that and let her also take the next question.
Yeah, I do think it would fall a little bit outside the scope. That being said, and I acknowledge I want to be respectful of people's time in applying to this program. I know it's not just an easy thing for people to fill out the application, but I will say it's going to be, we definitely want to leave enough room for us to see everything that comes in and decide a good diversity of ideas. So if it's a literary magazine that is trying to tell the stories of people in a community in a completely different format, or maybe a fiction format or something, I think that's really interesting, and I would be interested in hearing more about that idea. I think that certainly would fall under a novel or unique approach. So maybe depending more about your idea, but I do think we are pretty focused on the sort of news and information that folks need to feel more connected to where they live, to better make sense of where they live. So yeah, that's how I would answer that for now. Yeah, I mean, the 9-to-5 job, doing this program while working a 9-to-5 job, we did want to make sure that this program is accessible for folks who need to keep their full-time job for financial security reasons. I do think we do answer this on the GNI site, so you can look at the FAQ for a more detailed answer. But it is we're not going to tell you that it's going to be easy. I mean, certainly there is a lot of work involved in the boot camp, but it is very much doable for you to keep your job and to participate in this program. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Phillip?
No, I'd say, so people who've done the boot camp before definitely had a full-time reporting job at the time. The commitment that I'm looking for at minimum is, roughly like weekends and some evenings. Probably a minimum number of hours per week is going to hover around 8 hours. It's one of those things, like the more you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. If you're just able to kind of do the minimum, then I think you'll leave with like a really good sense of how you might take the next step after the boot camp. However, if you come into the boot camp and are able to prioritize investing more than that amount of time, let's say closer to 20, 30 hours a week, you will probably finish the boot camp ready to launch something. And the kind of next phase of this Startups Lab is hopefully going to support you in taking that next step. So, you know, I'm really keen for people who are thinking about taking the next step out of a newsroom to join the boot camp and to be able to experience it and get a lot out of it. And certainly getting a network of people, being in a cohort of people working on stuff is going to give you a lot, as will the curriculum. I suspect you just won't be quite as close to launching by the end, but 100% you can do it with a job. People have done that before.
Yes. And another person did ask what the time commitment would be to complete the assignments. So there is definitely more information on the site about that in terms of specific number of hours per week and that sort of thing. So I'll point you to that.
Yeah, and all the assignments are, what's the term? You know, they're kind of like shrinkable or expandable. You know, for example, I'll be asking you to do interviews with people, which as journalists, hopefully you're familiar with doing, or, you know, if you come from a journalism background, hopefully you're familiar with doing that. And, you know, and whether you do one interview or 100 interviews is somewhat, you know, scalable to your time commitment. And so, yeah, so, I mean, all the assignments are going to be, you know, possible to do in an hour, but you could easily spend as much time as you have completing the assignment. So hopefully that's helpful. And there's, you know, roughly 1 or 2 assignments per week, just to give you a sense. So there's the weekly webinar, which is going to be 90 minutes. You'll have 1 or 2 assignments per week, which at minimum are going to be 1 or 2 hours. And then there's readings, another usually 1 or 2 hours. So you're roughly minimum 6 to 8 hours. All right, so we're getting down to the wire here. We might run a few minutes over for those who need to drop off. We'll send you the recording, but let's try and get through a few more of these questions.
Yeah, so Phillip, do you want to take this? Will the program cover the mechanics of running the business, tracking financials, managing payroll, et cetera? And then will it also get into financing?
Yeah, and actually there's one here I merged a card that said, is the bootcamp appropriate for startups focused on aggregation or monetization of news or just publications? I wanted to quickly address that because it's very specific. Say again, no, the bootcamp, at least this round is focused on people who want to create information or reporting producing projects or companies or nonprofits. And so being focused on tools or aggregation is not for this round anyway. So yeah, in terms of the mechanics of running a business, tracking financials, managing payroll, yes and no. I kind of dive into this in the FAQ on the website. You know, there are basics that you need to know when you are thinking about starting a business. And so we go through the absolute basics. This is not for people typically who have, I mean, you often don't need to deal with payroll in the first year of a business. You often won't have anybody to pay other than yourself, and you often won't be able to pay yourself. So getting into the minutiae of payrolls a bit cart before the horse. So what we really focus on is helping you find a defensible, de-risked business model that will support you doing reporting or journalism or information production. And there will be tons of resources should you need to dive into the weeds of accounting, law, payroll, and so on. And also keep in mind, this is the first part of this Startups Lab, and phase 2 is really focused on the nitty-gritty of those questions. So we try not to get deep into that in the 8-week bootcamp, to be honest. But yeah, check out the FAQ. I think I've written up a bit on that. And same with financing. I mean, we do talk about the typical, you know, there's 6 or 7 ways in which local news startups typically do get financed. And there are a lot of case studies in the bootcamp. So we'll read about a lot of information in journalism startups and talk about how they got funded in the beginning. But there's not like a whole section on how to write a grant application or how to talk to an investor or a bank. We will talk about it a little bit, and certainly there's lots of room within the bootcamp to talk broadly outside of the curriculum about these things, but there isn't a module on fundraising, no.
I will take this next question really quick about prior entrepreneurship experience. It is absolutely not required. I want to be super clear about that. This program is really meant for the person who maybe has had an idea rolling around in their head for a while and they're just not sure how to get started. I've been in that position before. I know lots of other people who have started businesses have been in that position before. And this is really meant to make the process of launching a business more accessible for people. So please do not think that you need to point to any past experience doing that before. Really, again, the most important thing is that you clearly understand the audience that you want to serve and you have a really strong hypothesis for how to do that. Any other, so we're at time. Phillip, do you see any other questions that we could prioritize here in the last couple minutes?
Yeah, I would say so. In terms of examples, I've actually written a bunch of Medium posts that I think touch on some great examples. So what I'll do is maybe in the follow-up from this session, we can link that Medium post that has a bunch of examples. And I would say also just go through the Lion Publishers member directory, and you're going to find many examples of not early stage, but low headcount news sites that are doing a great job and winning awards. And in terms of early stage ones, my Medium post will cover that. One great example I always like to point to that you can go check out today is Santa Cruz Local, which is obviously Santa Cruz, California, started by the former managing editor of the Santa Cruz Sentinel there. And yeah, I think they're doing an incredible job. They're just a year old and really getting close to financial sustainability. So please check them out. Any other super critical ones? You touched on kind of how to make applications strong, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I see another question just about the medium. So it can be any medium. We are totally medium and platform agnostic. So whatever product you want to deliver in whatever way you think is best is great. So we're very open about that. I did drop my personal email address into the chat. So if you have any other questions that you dropped in here that we didn't address, please feel free to email me directly. I'm happy to answer it as best I can. And you know, the other thing I'll add is that this is a pilot program. You know, Phillip did run a version of this, but we are dramatically expanding it to try to you know, serve more people. And so we are going to take a look at all the applications we get and kind of figure out, you know, the right mix of folks who are working on different ideas across the US and Canada, and, you know, across different types of products and platforms and mediums. So we are learning alongside with you, which is literally in the spirit of entrepreneurship.
And so what I'll make a commitment to do today for any of the questions that we didn't speak to directly is I'll maybe just copy and paste all these into a Google Doc. And then for the ones that we didn't answer, I'll just type in a quick answer and we'll send that out with the follow-up just so you all have that. But thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. We've got 2 more of these sessions. If we didn't get to your question specifically, please pop it in or join the next session that we're going to do and ask again. And ask early. That really helps the things questions bubble up to the front of our mind for the early in the call. But yeah, I appreciate every one of you being here. I really hope that you consider applying. And yeah, did you want to do a quick pitch for your jobs, Anika, before we let people go?
I do, yeah. Really quickly, I'll address something in the comments. The teams, you can apply with up to 2 people. Phillip, I don't know if you said 3, yes. But yeah, it is 1 to 2 people is what we're looking for who can participate in the program. You can have a team of people of as many people as you'd like, but in terms of, you know, folks who are actively involved in the program, 2 is sort of the max per team. Yes, and so a quick plug for these jobs, where we want to build a community of people who are interested in entrepreneurship and journalism startups. And so we're going to be hiring a person on contract for 6 months to help us launch that community. And then hopefully, you know, if there's good traction with that, be able to extend that position. So that's the entrepreneurial journalism community manager. And then we're also hiring a senior program manager to actually help us manage this entire program. And we're really excited about that because this is phase 1 of the GNI Startups Lab, and there is going to be a phase 2, which we're really looking forward to talking more about with you guys. So please do check out those jobs. That's at lionpublishers.com, Careers with Lion. And I will include that link again in my follow-up email to you guys with the recording to this video. So that is it. That's all we've got for today.
Hey, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. This was great. Really appreciate you all joining on video.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.